Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron. You see this world? There's more work to be done. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. My name is Nate, and this is our spoiler-free review for Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron. Special thanks to our friends at Cineplex Pictures for inviting us to watch this film early for review. If you're joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast focusing on the world of movies, TV shows, video games, and all things geek-centric. Joining me for today's review, we have my own feathered guide into worlds unknown. He's the duck-billed Darcy, the heron-hugging Hudson. How you doing?
I don't know if I'd want to hug the heron from this movie.
No, yes, definitely not. He's pretty freaky. He'd probably give you a hug. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'd warm up to him over the course of an adventure. I mean, it seems like he grows on you, so
Yeah.
maybe that would be the case.
Hopefully. Darcy, I think we were talking on our journey to go see this movie, how it's just been such an incredible year for animation. And now even more so for Miyazaki fans and Studio Ghibli fans, or Ghibli. This is something we were debating as well. Ghibli or Ghibli.
Or Ghibli.
Or Ghibli.
Yeah.
I believe, because I tried to look this up before we started the review, and I think Ghibli is how Hayao Miyazaki pronounces it. So I think maybe that's the Japanese pronunciation. And then I've heard a lot of people in the West will say Ghibli. So I think both are right, because Miyazaki says that the name was a random thing he picked from like a plane that he loved.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it was
something
a
random
term.
like
So
that.
yeah, so I think it is Ghibli, but anyways, getting back to the year of animation that it's been, I want to know, for you, what was the last Miyazaki movie you watched, and what's your history with his films?
So the last one I watched actually is one of my favorites. I've watched it several times. It's actually technically not a Studio Ghibli film. It's one of his first directorial or movies, and it was the Castle of Cagliostro, which is
Whoa.
a Lupin the Third film. But I have always loved Studio Ghibli. As soon as I watched the first movie, the first movie I watched was Howl's Moving Castle, because I had read the book and I
Mm.
heard there was an animated adaptation, and I was like, I have to check this out. And that was just the beginning of me going down this rabbit hole of all his films. But again, I've recently rewatched all of them after picking up Layered Butter's issue 4 or 5, I think, of their magazine series.
Oh,
And it was
yeah.
the Ghibli issue. And it's a deep dive into the story behind his creative process and all that stuff. And his films are always a delight to behold. And I always love going back and watching them, no matter how many times I've seen it before.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where when we talk about certain video games and we talk about other animated movies, and oh, it's got such a Studio Ghibli look, or oh, I wish we could see this world done in a Studio Ghibli style. There's just something about these movies that just they're in sort of a class of their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the last Ghibli film I watched was Arrietty, which was directed, I think we were talking, it's directed by Goro Miyazaki, who's Hayao Miyazaki's son. As far as movies directed by Hayao himself, prior to this one, the last movie I watched, and this is going to be, I don't have as much Miyazaki, fandom cred as you do, but the last one I watched was Spirited Away. And otherwise, I've seen Princess Mononoke and Kiki's Delivery Service. But yeah, I think, Darcy, you had mentioned, when we were on our way to see the movie, you had a hunch as to why like Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke were the movies that I saw.
Yes, and that's because up until I think it was like 2010, 2011 or something like that, Disney was in charge of North American and basically anywhere that it wasn't Eastern Asia, they were in charge of distribution. So Lasseter, Pixar fame, he was the one who fell in love with Miyazaki's work and was like, we got to get this guy more recognition outside of Japan and all that. And that's where the big push came from. And unfortunately, they didn't end on the best of terms, the
Mm.
relationship with Disney. But at least we got these massive movies, or movies introduced to us at such a young age as they were coming out and stuff like that, and we weren't finding them later on. So it was really cool to grow up during that era where we were getting theatrical releases of Miyazaki films with these star-studded casts, and they've kind of only continued to keep that tradition going with this current cast. This current movie also having an incredible English voice cast as well. So
Oh,
yeah, it's
we'll
cool.
we'll bring that up for sure. I think yeah, though, I think the that element of being connected to Disney in that way, I think also helped myself and a lot of folks who weren't familiar with Hayao Miyazaki to almost uh um get him comparative right next to Walt Disney, right?
Hmm.
You hear it all the time, he's the Disney of Japan. And so I absolutely feel that way. We are looking forward to an upcoming trip to Japan in just over a year, maybe a year and a bit, and I cannot wait to sort of see the influence that Hayao Miyazaki has had on some of the different areas that we're going to be visiting. I
Hmm.
think is just phenomenal. So let's get to the synopsis for this film. A young boy named Mahito, I kept wanting to call him Mojito, a young boy named Mahito, yearning for his mother, ventures into a world shared by the living and the dead. There, death comes to an end and life finds a new beginning. A semi autobiographical fantasy about life and death and creation in tribute to friendship from the mind of Hayao Miyazaki. Written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki, animated by Studio Ghibli. The film stars Soma Sentoki, Masaki Suda, Ko Shibasaki, Aimyon, Yoshino Kimura, Takuya Kimura, Kaiko Takeshita, Jun Fubuki, Sawako Agawa, Karen Takezawa, Shinobu Otaki, Jun Kinomura, Kaori Kobayashi, and Shohei Hino. And that is, I apologize to anyone if I messed up your name and somehow you're listening to this. I don't know. But that is the Japanese cast. I'm also going to list the English cast as well. We saw the Japanese version of the film with that voice cast, but I do want to mention the English dub for those who are interested, because this film, you mentioned earlier, Darcy, how the English dubs always feature these just star-studded cast according to for folks in the West, and so the English dub of the film stars Christian Bale, Dave Bautista, Gemma Chan, Willem Dafoe, Karen Fukuhara, Mark Hamill, Robert Pattinson, Florence Pugh, Luca Padovan, Mamadou Athie, Tony Revolori, and Dan Stevens. The Boy and the Heron will be in theaters across Canada starting Friday, December 8th. So Darcy, let's dive into talking about this movie. Normally with our spoiler-free reviews, we do kind of like what worked and what didn't. I don't have a ton of what didn't. We will probably maybe save a little bit of that near the end. But obviously what worked and what works with every Studio Ghibli film are the visuals. They are so incredibly engrossing in this film. And, I think you brought up Lasseter with Pixar earlier, right? And
Hmm.
I feel like with Studio Ghibli, in my experience, they very much are kind of their own Pixar in a way where they very much have their own style. And again, we were talking about that's a Ghibli film. You notice it, you recognize it immediately, or
Hmm.
you'll recognize movies that are like they're going for that. They're trying to be Ghibli. But at the same time, like Pixar, with every film, they make these small iterations that are just so impressive from movie to movie. And the way that every shot in this film is so painterly, it you can't help but feel drawn into this world and these incredibly detailed spaces on screen.
Oh, 100%. I mean, again, one of the things that Ghibli is known for, or Ghibli, however we're going to call it, they're known for their, like, again, those landscapes that they create. They give these wide angle shots of where the story is taking place,
Yeah.
and they're just so beautifully detailed that you could just stare at them for hours and find yourself getting lost in them. And this movie is no different, where they have again upped the game to the next level, where these backgrounds and in these locations that the characters are interacting with are just so detailed, and they feel so like lived in and real despite being an animated film. And again, the characters, just the way that they have perfected that, ruffled hair or clothing texture, where again you saw it in the first movie, like back in Castle Cagliostro, or Nausicaa Valley of the Wind and stuff like that. All those had that, you could see where they were going for, and now with this movie they've gotten there, and I can't wait to see what they can do next, because every time they come out with a film, they blow me away with how much they can breathe life into these animated characters.
It's always so impressive. And I think, like, for me with this movie, very quickly, I think I noticed things like the grass or the water or fire, which plays a really big part in this film narratively. It's just they're just all animated in such unique ways, and ways that, again, I don't think I've seen in a Ghibli film, or really any animated movie for that matter. And it's just another way that they sort of add to the emphasis of what the character is going through at the time, by using those sort of very tangible, elemental aspects around the character.
And they definitely get, while these locations and these characters feel so real and so full of life, they really push the boundaries with animation, where they go to these more lucid, or you know out there moments, and the world kind of just starts to blend and become less defined, and more like a child's imagination just kind of running away with the smallest little thought. And it's always delightful to get lost in these worlds.
Absolutely. And I think, I think that's just it though. Like, you're talking about the sort of the lucid part of maybe the second half of this movie.
Hmm.
But even like the 1943 Pacific War visuals that we get, and just those areas of Japan in that time, it's just, again, the attention to detail is just incredible. And I think the world is so filled with, it's interesting because there's moments where it is filled with that movement, and it's hustling and it's bustling, and you see that. And then there's just those wonderful Ghibli picturesque things that we're talking
Hmm.
about, of just like where it just feels like the only thing moving on screen is the one character that you have to pay attention to. And
Slowly walking down a
yeah,
hill or
and it's
whatever,
this
and it's
big
just,
wide shot, and the characters in the distance, and
and you're
oh,
engrossed for every second of it, just like, wow. It just, in this, again, talking about the visuals, I feel like we could go directly into the next thing that works for, again, almost every Ghibli film, and that's the sound mixing and the
oh
score,
man.
because this movie again blows you away with the use of silence, and how, again, we mentioned Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, with their that very ambient and less is more kind of approach to a score or soundtrack, and
Hmm.
the way that they pair it with these visuals, like I said, it'll be silent, and all you hear is the wind blowing through the grass as this character walks down the hill, and you're in awe and almost how beautiful this simple little scene can be.
Yeah, I think the thing that sort of hit me immediately, you're sort of with the sound in the theater, and thank goodness the theater we were in, it wasn't anything too crazy. It wasn't I don't think it was AVX or anything too special. But even just the sound design from this film, the movie starts with sirens, and it just is like instantly hits you to the point where I was like, oh, the sound is going to be incredible in
Hmm.
this film, and I was ready for it, and it did not disappoint. I think it creates such a presence in the theater, right? Like, I mean, you were talking about there's a sequence where Mahito is just simply lying in bed, looking up at the ceiling of this room that he's not comfortable in, that he's not used to, and you hear the sort of the bugs in the background, or you hear like the wind that makes the house creak and
Hmm.
crack. And you were, I think you mentioned, like, coming out of the theater, you're like, I've been in those places
Oh
before, like
yeah, just
not
any.
maybe in Japan, but you've been in like a creaky cabin or something, and you they brought back those feelings for you.
Oh yeah, they do such a good job of recreating these moments that, like, again, while you haven't been to Japan, you've probably spent some time, at a cottage or out camping or something like that, and have heard what just the night sounds like when nothing's going on. And the fact that they use that to just emphasize this kid, he's lying awake and he can't go to sleep, and this is what he's hearing, and we've all been there. It's so relatable, just from an auditory sound standpoint. You can instantly be like, I've been there before and I know what he's feeling, at least at this moment. Like, I love it. It's so good.
Every wave, every wing flap. I think just anytime there's movement on screen, the sounds that accompany that movement just heighten that immersion. And,
Hmm.
like, shout out to the Foley artists on this film, because there's just so much. You feel the weight of certain things that are in the movie through the sound design. and I think it just helps to bring you that much closer to the moments and the characters that are on screen, and you feel like you're just inside this story. And it just, again, it's, for as impressive as the visuals are, the sound is, I think, equally impressive in this movie.
Hmm.
And then there's moments where there's no dialogue, there's no sound, and the music just takes over, right? We talked about those wide shots, and you just get that little wisp of piano score that comes in that,
Twinkling of keys
yeah,
type
we
thing
were,
that comes in and then fades
oh,
away, just like the wind, and it's
it's so good. And we were talking about how, like, it very much reminded us of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. And I'm sure, you know, visually, we know that Breath of the Wild definitely taken inspiration from Ghibli. And so it kind of sort of see that back and forth here. Who knows if maybe some of the music was maybe inspired by what they did. But I think, huge shout out to Joe Hisaishi, who has done the music for a number of Ghibli films, just killing it yet again. Like each stroke of the keys just helped to kind of make you feel like you're taking a few more steps
hmm
with
hmm
Mahito into this unknown world. And then I think, talking about the juxtaposition of the sound and the audio, and paying so much attention to that, to the silence with the music. There's also this juxtaposition within the music itself of, yes, you've got the piano for those light moments of exploration and moving deeper and deeper, but then the heavy orchestrated string moments in those scenes where you have to feel those emotions, where they hit, they just get your heart racing. It's just unbelievable.
It's incredible. Again, it's what you expect from any Studio Ghibli film, where the score is just as important as these visuals, because they are. There's another character. We talk about this a lot in things we love, where the soundtrack or the way that things are mixed, it makes it feel like it's just bringing the world to life on its own way. And again, the soundtrack does it all over again. Like you said, the orchestral stuff where it really hits you hard in those tense moments, and then you're followed that up with a nice peaceful scene where it's silent and you're just hearing the wind blow or the rustling of the waves. And it's just the back and forth, and the journey you go on isn't just through this world, it's through just nature itself and the way that it's interpreted. And I always love that. It's
It's
so
so
good.
good. I mean, again, like, I'm in no way, I don't, am I going to say that animation is easy for anyone, but I think that hearing the sounds and the soundtrack and the attention to detail of when to use what, I think it just elevates and shows why Ghibli is at the top of their game,
Hmm. Hmm.
where maybe some other animated studios out there in the world might just choose to have music flowing the entire time. And I think the smart decisions of when to use it is, again, just elevates the movie, and these movies in general. The cast, I want to talk about some of these performances. Again, we watched the Japanese version of the film with subtitles, so we can't really speak to the English dub. But the entire cast was excellent. I think, even though for myself, like, it's subtitled, I still felt the level of emotion from the original cast. I think they draw you in with every line, with every moment of emotion. And I think, watching this, and in our case, reading throughout the movie, I'm happy to say that it was really quick that the subtitles just melted away. And I know for yourself, Darcy, being an avid anime fan, you prefer subtitles over
Hmm.
dub, and so this isn't something that you're not necessarily used to. So I'm sure for you it was probably pretty easy as well.
Oh, as soon as it started, I knew what I was getting into. Again, this Ghibli, I have watched both the subs and dubs of them, because again, the star-studded casts are always enough to give it a rewatch on its own. But I'll rewatch without that as a factor. But again, yeah, the voice cast. There's something about seeing it in the original. I always like to go sub before dub, at
Hmm.
least for these Ghibli films, because the the emotion I feel is, again, that's the level of a voice actor, or the skill of a voice actor comes across and how much they can make a feel an emotion. And if I don't understand the language but can still be hit just as hard by these emotions, I feel like that's a testament to how good these actors are. And Ghibli actors have always been top notch in terms of delivering these moments and scenes, and just with the emotion you feel reading it, just you forget you're reading and you feel those words so much more, I think. And I love it.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about I think it's a bigger conversation, the differences between
Oh yeah.
an actor coming in and doing a voice and then a voice actor. And I think, Soma Sentoki, who plays Mahito, I was looking at their IMDb and recognizing that they've been in a lot of anime. And I'm sure, I believe that is true for a lot of this cast. And I
Hmm.
think, I love the character of Mahito. He's driven. You hear like the passion in his voice, and the sadness in his voice as well. Again, he's going through such a sad moment in time. And I also wanted to shout out Masaki Suda, who plays the Heron, because his voice is so freaky. And once you see a little bit more of the Heron, I'm not going to spoil, but once you see more of the Heron, you're going to understand why he went with the voice he did. I think it's exactly what you would expect out of a character
Hmm.
like that, to sound like. And I think it's to the point where, I watched the English trailer dub now, like just before we started recording this, and it sounds like Robert Pattinson is doing his best impression of Masaki
I was gonna say
Suda.
the same thing because I also did. I was also curious about the voice cast before we sat down here, so I too watched that trailer. And
Yeah,
as soon as he started talking, he's like, you know, that's a pretty good interpretation of the gray hair. And he
yeah.
definitely got sat down and watched the film and really got to understand Misaki Suda's performance for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I am excited to see the English dub, though, to see how it compares and to kind of, again, just watch this movie again. I do want to I know we've already moved past visuals, but I did want to just on the topic of characters, because I brought up there, and I want to just quickly shout out the character design. Again, it's Ghibli. It's that style. It's what you would expect, right? You've got the human and non-human characters with overemphasized features where like maybe it's like their nose makes up the majority of their face, or one of the grannies that are the caretakers for Mahito. There's 7 of them, and they're all so unique. And I love the one with glasses on her face because it looks like she has 4 eyes. And I think that's such in terms of visual storytelling, it's so cool to see how these movies slowly ease you in to the strangeness and otherworldliness by, again, you've got the granny with glasses that are 4 eyes, and initially it's a bit jarring because you're like, wait, does she have 4 eyes, or those are just her glasses? And then so the way that they kind of do that, or the way they change the appearance of the Heron slowly, one little bit at a time, I think it emphasizes this sort of spiral for you as an audience member, as if you're traveling down a visual rabbit hole alongside Mahito.
And that's what I love about Ghibli films usually is that like in terms of story and understanding and stuff like that, you are just as lost as these characters who are entering these fantastical realms. And the fact that, like you said, they use these visual cues to slowly ease you into it as the characters are accepting this journey and deciding to go on it and stuff like that. And that it gets the ball rolling. It's again, it really feels like you're along for the ride
Yeah,
and are experiencing everything for the first time, just like Mahito is in this movie. And it's so refreshing to go to a movie and to know that you might be lost, but by the end of the movie, you'll be happy with the journey you went on and want to watch it again to figure out why that makes you so happy type thing. Like these movies are always so worth a rewatch because there's so much detail in it. And again, that first time you might not be following everything, but by the end it clicks and all of a sudden you want to go back and see all those little Easter eggs or clues that they slowly unwind. And I love these films.
absolutely. I think by the time you see, a giant fish that is designed in a way that maybe you've not really seen before, it it's not one of those things that sort of catches you off guard, because again, you're slowly being introduced to more weirder and weirder stuff, so that by the time Mahito experiences these things and sees certain characters and beings that he's never seen before, it's not one of those things where, you're just like, oh, it's an animated movie, so of course there's going to be like weird looking characters. It's no, no, no. It is believable. You're kind of like, no, that does exist, based off of
Hmm.
some of the stuff I've seen before. So it's absolutely phenomenal. I want to talk a little bit about the story. Of course, again, this will be full spoiler free, no spoilers at all. But in Japan, the movie is called How Do You Live, which is a book that Mahito actually receives in the movie, and was Hayao Miyazaki's favorite book as a child. So when the description calls this semi autobiographical, they mean it. and I think,
Mhm.
Darcy, you were telling me some of the ways that Miyazaki definitely pulled from his own life for this story.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, he like a lot of Mahito's story is almost parallel to Hayao Miyazaki's as he was growing up through the war and having to move up to the countryside to kind of get out of the city that was kind of under fire, going through changes during these hard times. And it's really cool how we've always seen that in most Ghibli films that a lot of his stories at least come from places that he you can tell he visited these places as a child, or he grew up in the countryside exploring these hills and having his just childhood imagination run away and get him, allow him to escape what he maybe doesn't feel so comfortable doing, or didn't feel so comfortable doing at the time and stuff like that. So this film definitely feels the closest to home in terms of how much he's pulling from his real life, especially with that move and the relocation to the countryside. But again, it's that realism that really makes these movies come to life, because you can you can feel like the kid again and understand where that imagination is taking you.
I want to you just what literally what you just said it there. Feel like a kid again. From an animation standpoint, there is a moment in the movie right off the bat, really early in the moment in the movie, where I won't spoil what's necessarily happening, but let's just say Mahito has to get up the stairs really fast, and you see him run up the stairs on all four. 100%, I did that as a kid. I don't know
Oh
if
yeah.
you, yeah, right. I
Oh
think
yeah. Everyone does.
every kid has run up the stairs on all fours, and it was just something that, like, I was like, oh, I totally did that. And again, I think that that connects you to Mahito in such a wonderful way, and to, in a certain degree, Hayao Miyazaki. I think the movie feels very, at least from what I've seen of Ghibli, much like a lot of the stuff, sort of the greatest hits of his previous work. And I think it felt to me, I most equate it to Spirited Away. I think, again, you're slowly brought into this world further and further. And there's so many moments where my mind kept racing back and forth to sort of figure out exactly where Mahito was at certain points in the movie. The world is showing a space where death and life share the same space. And it's
Hmm.
so unique and it's so original. And in certain moments I was delighted. In other moments, I'm feeling very melancholic and sad. And then there's a lot to be scared of in this movie. I don't think it doesn't hold back at all for younger audiences or families that might see an animated movie and say, well, animated movie equals family movie. I definitely think I would encourage families to see this movie. I would encourage kids to watch this movie, but just to keep in mind, if there is blood, there's blood. You see blood, right? If there's guts spilling out of a giant fish, you're going to see shiny, nasty guts. And I think there's so many elements of the movie that are scary, but I think, in my mind at least, and correct me if you feel the same way, Darcy, but I just feel like that is something that's incredibly important to be in an animated movie. Growing up in the 90s, we had some scary stuff in films that we watched that, to me, helped me understand the dangers of life, not in like a way that was scarring. I think just something that almost helped prepare me for certain things to come, right?
Uh, I mean, it's totally important. I 100% agree with that. The fact that life isn't always, sunshine and lollipops and stuff like that. And like I
Hmm.
said, a lot of those earlier animated movies of the 90s and stuff like that didn't shy away from it. And like, it's a very important lesson to learn. And Ghibli films have never been afraid to go there and go to a dark place in order to, show that the world isn't always perfect. And
Hmm.
I love how they do that in this film, where again it's very shocking, very visceral at times, but then it goes right back to being the fantastical, whimsical story that you were expecting. And
Yeah.
again, it's that those highs and lows that really take you on this ride and really pull you in even more, because you're dwelling on what you just saw while you're trying to take in what's coming next, and it's always fun.
100%. Yeah, I think, yeah, there is always going to be that element of fun, and there's certain elements of comedy as well. I think between, I think some of the moments with Koriko and the gray heron, and sort of the
Mhm.
back and forth there is really, really fun. But when I say scary, like, there's no jump scares or anything like that. Like, it's not I'm not talking about a horror movie. Just It's just something that adds to the overall experience that will stay with you
Mhm.
long after you've watched this movie. I think, like those damn pigs in Spirited Away. There is a certain visual of a character that is going to be burned in my brain forever, and I think it'll remind me on a daily basis why I don't like birds. Um, but on the topic of didn't like, was there anything, Darcy, for yourself that maybe didn't work about this movie?
I was trying to find something that I didn't like, and again, I said it wasn't my favorite Ghibli film, but
Hmm.
I loved it nonetheless. And there wasn't really anything that I didn't enjoy about the film. It was, if anything, maybe sometimes the pacing
Yeah.
was a bit all over the place, but again, I remember feeling that way on first watches of past Ghibli films, and on rewatches, I find myself waiting to find that slowdown or slog and not finding it the second
Oh,
time.
okay.
So I'm just expecting that maybe that is what I'm going through right now, because again, I have a hard time finding something I didn't appreciate. But maybe if you say something, that'll jog something that I have something to say.
I think, you know what? I think you're absolutely right. Is that, like, again, it's so tough when it's such an incredible piece of art, right? And I think that's another aspect to this. Is it's not just a movie. It is very much a piece of art. And again, I'm sure that can be said about the craft of film in general, but just like, I just feel like and maybe this is something that Studio Ghibli movies do a lot. I think for me, the only thing that I sort of like was a bit uh, pulled out of the movie at one point, near in the third act. There's sort of like a jump in time that was just a little bit confusing, and then the wrap up of the movie is immensely fast, right? I think that, when you've got a movie that in a way lovingly takes its time through certain parts to help you appreciate the visuals, appreciate the sound, appreciate the moment in the narrative, it is a bit quick at the end. It sort of just rushes to the finish, and to me, that change of pace, it was definitely something I noticed. To your point, possibly upon a second watch, maybe I'll be able to kind of be okay with it a little bit more. But it is definitely something I felt on my first watch, and I think that between that and then just certain elements of sort of watching this movie and sort of going back and forth on my mind of, well, it's purposely trying to give you this lucid dream effect of, you're going through the movie and you're like, what's going on? Where am I? How did I get here? And kind of like you feel, when you're both in a dream and when you wake up from a dream, it gives you those feelings. But there's almost a bit in my mind, a conflict of that and sort of a bit more of a straightforward message, that I'm sure there are messages that have gone over my head. I cannot wait to see, the new rock stars or whoever is going to talk about the meanings behind this movie. I can't wait to dive into that and to watch the movie again and maybe get even more meaning out of it. But it is just something I noticed, and I think that rush to the finish didn't help me to kind of be like, oh, I totally get everything by the end of it. I think the
Mhm.
movie comes together in the end, but there was just sort of a bit of like, oh, okay, we're here.
Y Yeah, I mean, so, you just saying that reminded me some of the issues I have, again, on most first watches I have with Ghibli films, and it
Yeah,
is that they do tend to have these fast wrap-ups. While the journey is so important, and getting to that final destination or the goal that was set out at the beginning of the film, once you get to that goal, it's pretty much over, and then
that's it.
they wrap up and go home, and
Hmm.
it's I think the meaning behind that, again, the way I've after rewatching these films so many times, I feel like I'm coming away with the fact that the whole point is that adventures end, but stories don't. So we just saw one adventure of
Mm,
these people's lives or into this fantastical world, and what is left for us to do is to make up our own adventures in these own worlds, or imagine how the story could continue potentially and stuff like that. So
hmm.
again, that comes from me just knowing how I feel about after each time I rewatch one of these films and fall in love with it for a whole new reason and stuff like that. So I feel, again, to me, this is the most Ghibli film that I have watched in a long time. It manages to do what every Ghibli film tries to do, but this one knocks it out of the park in every regard, in terms of the soundtrack, the score, the beautiful visuals, just the fact that you're creating a world and just going on this whirlwind of a journey and finding out everything and unfolding these layers and wanting to know more. And by the end of the film, while you may not understand how you got there, you always enjoy the journey you went on. And that this movie was that wholeheartedly, because again, while the end did come fast and wrap up quickly, I still came out of there with a smile on my face and enjoying my time I just spent going into this new fantastical world.
Well, I love that. I mean, that to me, that sounds like a really good place to wrap up our review, and that almost sounds like if I was to ask for your final thoughts and
I think
rating.
I jumped the gun there and
That's
said my
okay.
final thoughts.
Well, I'd
So
love
I
to
guess
know how many birds out of 5 would you give the movie?
so again, this is I can't give it a 5 out of 5 because like I said, it isn't my favorite Ghibli film,
Hmm.
but this is the closest 4.5 to a 5 I've ever given because it again embodies so much of what Ghibli has always tried to accomplish in telling these fantastical stories and taking you on a journey that you never thought you'd enjoy as much as you possibly could. So yeah, 4.5 out of 5 birds for me.
I think I'm pretty much in that same realm. I think it's another Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki masterwork of
Mhm.
art. I think it's such incredibly detailed, painterly world that we talked about, that you would expect out of the team. But again, they still find ways to elevate upon their previous works. And I think, again, the sound, the music, just they work alongside the visuals to create this space that just draws you in, and you go further and deeper into this fever dream of a story that's presented. I think it's one that's definitely, as we've been talking about, it's going to require multiple viewings. I'd recommend seeing it in both subbed and dubbed versions if you're going to watch it more than once. I think, again, that rush to the finish ending for me was just a bit too quick, but again, like you said, it comes together in the end, and it sticks with you. I think is the biggest thing, is the moments for the journey along the way I'm going to remember, and they've stayed with me after watching the movie. And yeah, I think it had me longing to not only go back and watch this movie again, but to watch more Hayao Miyazaki, to watch more Studio Ghibli, to watch more films from Japan in general, to see more stories from Japan. On the ride home, we were talking about language. We're talking about the Japanese language and some of the words that we recognized as we watched the movie. And I think anytime, something that you would go to the movie theaters for can get you to that place of wanting to just learn more in general about a culture, I think that's incredible. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and to be wrapped up in this story that is just so um just fun, like just I get beautiful, is the
Mhm.
maybe the best word I could put for it. I again, just the visuals will stay with me, the moments will stay with me. There's some really freaky stuff that's going to stay with me as well. But I think the views on life and death and rebirth, I'm excited to see that expanded and to learn more about what the movie is trying to say about that. So I'm just we continue to be blown away with just how incredible 2023 has been, for animation this year. I think again, it's just from the animated series we've gotten to the animated movies. We're definitely absolutely going to see Oscar noms for this film. I
Mhm.
wholeheartedly believe that.
Mhm.
And if I'm wrong, then the Oscars is wrong. This is one of the best of the year. I'm going to give The Boy and the Heron a very solid 4.5 out of 5 birds. I was kind of sitting at a 4, but honestly, talking about the sound and the visuals alone brought me up. So
Yeah.
I'm absolutely so
It's
impressed.
masterwork in both like matching the visual to a score and soundtrack. Like, yeah, if you want a textbook definition of how to do it, watch this film.
Watch this film. Watch this film. And he's gone back and forth on if this is his last film or not his last film. We kind of were talking about how like it should be, again, just because of how close it is to what we've read about, or what I've read about what you've kind of described to me about his life, and how it just sort of emphasizes so much of that. But at the same time, like, if he wants to make another movie, I'm not going to stop him. Like, let's go.
I won't say no.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
gonna. Yeah.
But that is it for this spoiler-free review of The Boy and the Heron. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts on this movie or any of the shows or movies we cover, well, I'm going to let Darcy be your feathery guide so he can tell you how you can reach us.
Feathery guide. Oh, they can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or if that's too much like getting lost in your granduncle's weird tower on your mom's property, you can reach out to us on Instagram at wearegeekcentric or on Twitter or X. Sorry, I haven't said it. I haven't done this since the name change.
Jeez,
Jeez.
doesn't matter.
Or they can reach us over there at Geekcentric YT.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if maybe X will go away. Maybe it should go
I
away.
hope it
Yeah,
does. It should.
we'll see. We'll see. But I also want to invite you to join our Discord using the link in our description, so we can talk about this movie and all the movies and shows we cover. Keep in mind, we have a ton of other episodes covering the recent releases with our spoiler-free reviews for Disney's Wish, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, Next Goal Wins, The Hunger Games: A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, The Marvels, and the Netflix series Blue Eye Samurai. So pretty much a lot of the stuff that's in theaters right now or streaming right now. We also have some great interviews out now, like our most recent interviews with the folks behind Disney's Wish, director Fawn Vierenthorn and executive producer Peter Del Vecchio. Justin had a chance to sit down with them and talk about their collaboration and sort of the full circle sort of story of Fawn Vierenthorn getting to direct a movie after growing up with these movies. And then I had the chance to sit down and chat with the incredible Alan Tudyk, the voice behind Valentino, the baby goat, as well as so many voices from the past decade of Disney films. We discussed how he found the voice of Valentino, his favorite Disney film of all time, and I got to share my obsession with Disney and Ravensburger's Lorcana trading card game with him. I gave him some cards that feature some familiar faces on them, and his reactions did not disappoint. So be sure to check out those interviews either here on your podcast service of choice or over on YouTube at youtube.com/geekcentric, and also on our Instagram at We Are Geekcentric, and of course our TikTok. You can see some clips that were really fun that we made of that interview. And I know we're a little bit late to the game here, but if you are a Marvel fan like we are, we actually do have our spoiler-filled discussion for The Marvels out now, where we were joined by friend of the show, Alyssa Balistreri, and we discussed what we loved, what could have been better, as well as those two unbelievable end credit scenes and what we think they might mean for the MCU going forward. So be sure to check that one out as well. Darcy, listen, this was delightful. It wasn't as delightful as a Studio Ghibli movie, but I mean, how can you can't match
It
that.
was close.
Yeah.
Pretty darn close.
Can you start flapping your wings and fly around the room? And okay, there we go. Perfect. Now
let me just swallow my head with the beak. Hold on. Here we go.
There we go. Darcy, thank you so much for joining me for this bird-filled review. And as we say, love ya.
Laters.